Okay, magandang gabi po sa mga viewers namin. Ngayon po kasama ko si Mr. Jetro Gardon sa isang seminar talk, virtual talk. Ito ay ating first time sa ating channel. Sana matuto kayo o manood kayo para tayo ay matuto. Ang seminar na ito, ang virtual talk na ito ay para sa lahat. Teachers, estudyante, learners, lahat to. Kasi itong mga talk namin na ginagawa ay tulong lang namin para sa edukasyon. Kasi naniniwala kami na ang edukasyon ay ating napaka-importante niyan. The greatest investment is education. So we are investing in education. So ito ay libreng seminar para sa lahat. Sana matuto kayo sa ating napakagaling na speaker, si Mr. Jetro Gardon. Mr. Jetro, kamusta ka?
Hello. Okay naman. Thanks for having me. At magandang gabi, magandang araw kung anong oras man tayo napapanood ng mga tagapanood natin, magandang araw.
Ito ay historical na gabi dahil dito sa ating channel, ito ay first time nating ginawa. At ang pinakauna nating guest ay ito nga si Mr. Jetro Gardon. Si Mr. Gardon ay graduate ng Philippine Normal University. Physics, di ba? Tama, Mr. Jetro? Physics ang kanyang tinapos. At nagturo siya ng 1 taon sa St. Mary's Academy, Pasay. At former teacher din siya sa Pio del Pilar High School in Makati. At ngayon ay pinagmamalaki natin na isa siyang DOST scholar na nag-aaral siya ngayon sa De La Salle University. Tama ba, Mr. Gardon? MA in Physics, tama ba?
Master of Science sa Physics, teaching physics.
Napakahusay ni Mr. Gardon.
Hindi naman.
So, alam ko marami siyang masishare sa atin. Kaya inimbitahan natin siya. Itong ating teacher series na tatawagin natin ay mangyayari tuwing Sunday or Saturday, either of the 2 days. Kung di Saturday, Sunday, para makapagbigay kaalaman lamang sa ating mga kaguruan, sa mga magulang, at syempre higit sa lahat sa ating mga estudyante o learners na tinatawag. So, hindi ko na papahabain pa. Mr. Jetro, ready ka na ba?
Ready na.
Okay, simulan na po natin.
Okay. Ayun, again, good evening sa mga viewers natin. Syempre, papasalamat ako kay Sir Irvin for inviting me maka-share kahit konti nating nalalaman sa education, maparating natin sa mga kapwa nating guro, at mga nag-aspire din maging guro, makatulong sa kanila makadagdag ng kaalaman, lalo na sa panahon na to. Malaki yung challenge na fini-face ng educational system gawa nitong COVID-19 pandemic. So ngayon, pag-usapan natin itong acting topic, revisiting the constructivist view of assessment. So sa araw na to, gusto nating mapag-usapan at maunawaan, ano? So next slide please po. Okay, so first, we want to revisit yung constructivist view of assessment based from studies. So we will check ano ba yung diferensya ng constructivist view ng assessment at yung traditional na view ng assessment for us to be prepared for the new normal. So what we're going to do is, or to learn, is not really talk about what are the things na isa-isa na pwede natin gawin in terms of assessment in the new normal, but what we want to know is to revisit muna kung ano yung principles ng constructivist view. Okay? And we will elaborate more of those things later. And then second one is to check how DepEd's policies articulate the adoption of the constructivist view. Titingnan natin kung yung mga policies ba ng DepEd on assessment is supportive of that view, yung constructivist view, or it is still inclined towards the traditional view of assessment. So those are the things that we want to learn at least in this session. Next slide, please. Okay. So simulan natin nung kami nag-aaral we graduated kami ni Irvin magka-batch sa PNU 2014. That is at the middle nung transition from the old curriculum to the new one, yung K to 12 program. And so palagi siyang pinag-uusapan sa mga prof ed classes and even non-prof ed classes. Yung bagong style of teaching, yung bagong anyo ng edukasyon. Kasi which is primarily based on the constructivist view of learning. That's yung 21st century education. So there's a paradigm shift from the traditional to the constructivist view of learning, no? In which the emphasis now is more on the learner's construction of ideas. We really highlight the process on how students learn rather than just assessing them or determining kung pumasa ba, umabot ba sa standards ng estudyante o hindi, no? Hindi siya ganoon. Ang emphasis natin yung process, yung kung paano narating ng estudyante yung pagkatuto. Kaya teachers nowadays are deemed as facilitators of learning. They are not like before, the traditional style, na sila ay the sage in the stage, ika nga nila, wherein all knowledge, all ideas will come from the teacher, the students will absorb everything. Now, it's the role of the teachers is more of a facilitator. The teacher creates an environment wherein yung students will learn, and they will just facilitate. Hindi sila ang timon, no? Sila lang yung nagfa-facilitate. Sila lang yung gumagabay sa estudyante na ma-attain nung estudyante yung sarili nilang pagkatuto. Okay? Next slide, please. So, if there's a paradigm shift, sa education, ibig sabihin, yung assessment necessarily follows na meron dapat pagbabago rin sa view natin sa assessment. So, hindi lang sa instruction, hindi lang yung sa pagtuturo natin wherein we are more inclined in being just facilitators of learning. Pati assessment dapat may shift ng paradigm. So, dapat ang assessment maging constructivist din ang view natin, no? We should adopt this new paradigm in assessing our students. So paano natin malalaman ano yung pagkakaiba nung traditional na ginagawa nating assessment, the assessment of, they say, 20th century, to the assessment that is accepted nowadays, which is yung constructivist view. So what we have on the next slides will be some studies telling us na the difference between traditional and constructivist assessment, no? Will be, if you're listening, you're a teacher, and you have been doing assessment for how many years, you'll find out if yung ginagawa mo ba, is it traditional or is it constructivist, no? So first one, Rogier 2014, sabi niya, the ultimate goal of assessment nowadays should be the improvement of student learning. Okay? Rather than yung sa traditional view wherein the priority is just giving marks according dun sa level of mastery ng content, no? Ibig sabihin ang highlight natin is on the improvement, the process of the learning process itself ng student. Hindi tayo nakapokus lang sa lagi sa dulo wherein we are only concerned with the grades na ibibigay sa bata. We want to, the process of assessment starts within instruction wherein every now and then you have to check on the improvement of the students in terms of his or her learning. Okay, next slide please. Aside from that, Ogan, Bekoruglu, and Suzuk in 2014 mentioned, okay, that traditional assessment supports assessment of learning, while constructivist assessment ang kanya pinopromote is assessment for learning. So anong sabi natin? O anong makikita natin dito? Ang traditional assessment, yung assessment noong bago tayo nagpalit ng curriculum, is more on assessment of learning, determining if students achieve the curriculum standards. Papasa o hindi. Pag pumasa, ibig sabihin, umabot dun sa standards na nire-require ng DepEd. Pag hindi pumasa, hindi siya umabot sa standard. That's traditional assessment, assessment of learning. Meanwhile, constructivist assessment promotes assessment for learning. Paano po yun? Ano yung kaibahan niya? Unlike yung assessment of learning, which is nakafocus lang dun sa dulo, which is to determine kung ano yung na-attain na standard ng student. Dito sa assessment for learning, there is an engagement between the teacher and the student, like a dialogue between them, and that includes feedback. So if you give assessments to students, merong feedback na nagaganap, wherein pag nagbigay ng output si estudyante, you as a teacher, you check, you check, then you, based from what you have checked, you will give the feedback dun sa estudyante. And then from that feedback, the student will try to look for points of improvement, as you have suggested in your feedback. So yun ang kaibahan natin sa assessment of learning at assessment for learning. Next slide, please. So another study, Hodgson and Pyle in 2010, said, okay, ano yung main advocacy ng assessment for learning? Okay? It is what? Aside sa sinabi natin kanina, it also has the ability to identify, it also needs to identify yung prior knowledge ng estudyante, unang-una. And what the students do not know, and what they partially know. So normally, ginagawa natin yan. We do pre-tests. Bibigay tayo ng pre-test sa mga bata. And the purpose of the pre-test is what is said here. Di ba? Alamin natin ano yung alam ng bata. Ano yung alam ng ating estudyante. Ano yung hindi niya alam. Ano yung maaring alam niya pero hindi ganun kalalim yung kanyang kaalaman. Batay sa resulta ng pre-test. Why? Because the results will help you as a teacher prepare a teaching plan to address those the prior knowledge of the student. Okay? Yung iyong gagawing plano sa pagtuturo ay nakabatay sa kung ano yung nalalaman na ng ng iyong mga mag-aaral, ano yung hindi pa nila nalalaman, at ano yung kailangan pa nilang palalimin ng pag-aaral. Okay? Normally, we do pre-tests before we start the chapter or a unit or a quarter. And sometimes we do it just for the sake of doing it. Bibigay tayong pre-test. But we have to understand the purpose of giving a pre-test. The pre-test allows us to determine students' prior knowledge that can be used to devise or to determine what type of teaching strategy you're going to use. What are the things you have to highlight sa pagtuturo mo. Yun yung kahalagahan o yun yung isang component ng assessment for learning. Next. Okay. Moreover, you have Brookhart, mentioned in De La Piana, Gardon and Main, claiming that classroom assessment nowadays, which is still constructivist, yun nga yung present na ina-accept nating principle ng assessment, should be tied to learning and the decisions made by the teachers and the students. Okay? Bakit mahalaga yun? Bakit mahalaga na the decision making is not only made by teachers but also by students? In that way kasi, the responsibility for learning will not solely rest on the hands of the teacher. Yung estudyante, nagkakaroon din ng responsibilidad sa sarili niyang pagkatuto kasi kasama siya sa nagdedesisyon para sa kanyang pagkatuto, no? dapat yung proseso ng assessment natin is a process wherein the students will also learn and will guide them towards achieving the next level. Kaya nga we always give feedback. Once they accomplish, let's say, a formative assessment, and then nagsubmit siya, chinekan mo, you pointed out things to improve, that's your feedback, you give it back to the learner. The learner can identify, ito pala yung pagkukulang ko. So at least, nagawa mo yung responsibility mo as a teacher. The student also, based from the feedback that you have given them, will also determine that the teacher provided the points of improvement. So dapat ako na ang bahala rito. So kaya importante na sinasama natin yung estudyante sa decision making regarding their own learning. And that's the purpose of assessment for learning, yung kasalukuyan nating tinatanggap na view, yung constructivist assessment. Okay, next please. Another study by Sahin and Ostork. This is a very recent study in 2018. It highlighted the role of assessment in student learning. The new constructivist approach not only valued the showing of student performance, but also the process that deeply affects different educational applications, which lead towards the emphasis on formative assessment. So another researcher affirms that the new perspective is towards constructivist the constructivist view, the view that formative assessment mechanisms are more important now than the traditional one. Okay, next please. So we have mentioned a lot of foreign studies a while ago. We have here we have local researchers by Orbe Espinosa and Datukan 2018, which also says that the assessment process in the new K-12 curriculum should be emphasizing what? Emphasizing formative process for quality assurance of student learning. So our local researchers, local experts in education, also says that the formative process of assessment is the preferable way of assessing students in the K to 12 curriculum. So that affirms na we have to embrace this new view of assessment. Why am I saying that we have to embrace? Am I seeing some teachers not embracing it? Well, even I must admit in my what? How many years of teaching na? 5, 6 years. Even it's really hard to accept yung shift. Why? Because nung ako'y nag-aaral nung mula elementary, high school, syempre kung paano kang tinest nung mga teacher mo noon, ganun din ang gusto mo sanang way to test your students. For example, tawag dito, nung ako'y estudyante, madalas chine-check yung notebook, chine-check yung, o kaya nagpapa-quiz, madalas, but sometimes hindi siya bumabalik sa'yo. Pag ikaw na ang teacher, iisipin mo rin, ba't check rin ng notebook or ganun din, papa-quiz ka. But you have to take note that is it what the constructivist view wants or prescribes? We have to look at the principles that we have mentioned a while ago. There's an emphasis now, more emphasis on the formative process in assessing our students. Next slide, please. Okay, so Price, Pearson, and Light. Okay, this is a study in 2011. Already claimed that the 20th century way of assessing students was already abandoned worldwide. So there is really a shift. This is not only a paradigm shift that is local. It is an international paradigm shift in instruction and in assessment. Okay? The current trend, according to them, favors the support of students' learning, with studies showing what? powerful effects of assessment embedded in the learning process. That's basically formative assessment. Okay? Assessment that is embedded in the learning process, not in the end of the learning process. Because summative assessments are in the end of the learning process. But if your assessment is embedded in your instruction, you do formative assessment once in a while you are in the course of your lessons. According to studies, it has powerful effects. And ilan na yung binanggit nating studies that are affirming that indeed the formative assessment view of is quite the most accepted and are quite effective. Next slide, please. So, ano yung characteristics, according to Price, Pearson, and Light, of this new style of assessment? Okay? What in, in, in summary, what are the characteristics? Ano yung kailangang meron doon sa ginagawa nating assessment? Okay? First one is this assessment tools should give insights on student learning in order for teachers to modify instruction. So whatever form of assessment ito, whether it's written, performance based, or whatsoever, which we'll be mentioning later, dapat itong in general, this assessment strategy provides insights, okay, on student learning in order for teachers to modify instruction. Yung ating mga ginagawang assessment strategies ay hindi lamang for the sake of doing assessment. We should make sure that this type of assessment allows us to look for points where we can modify instruction, improve instruction in case it is needed. Okay? For example, sabi natin yung pinaka-common, you give a quiz. Maybe, for example, if I'm teaching, say, problem solving, certain topic in physics, when I give quizzes, I make sure that the quiz can be used to modify instruction. How? You immediately check and see kung yung ginawa mo instruction is effective. Paano mo nalalaman yun? If the results are good, many of your students are able to catch up with what you're teaching, then it's good, no? Maybe you don't have to adjust instruction. But for sure, normally it's a problem for us, no? Personal experience, physics teachers, math teachers, there are really students na even whole class na nahihirapan, for example, in problem solving nga. So you try a certain type of instruction, you give a test or quiz, you check and the results are not quite good, you try to modify instruction. For example, if you are doing a lecture style and it didn't work based from the results, try to do a peer tutoring, or you have worksheet style, or ano bang strategy na marami naman diyang pwedeng kunin, you try. If the results of your formative assessment suggest that you have to modify instruction. Next one is the assessment strategy or tool should assess a broader range of skills and abilities. I remember one study that I came across. This is a foreign study, I think in Bangladesh ata. Where they evaluated summative exams, no? Summative exams. And in science ito. And then they looked at the questions. And they find out that majority of the questions, actually, as big majority, are only measuring low-level thinking skills. Low-order thinking skills, lots lang. Then questions for HOTS, very, very few. So what happens that you are only assessing a very, very small range of skills or abilities. So dapat yung ating ginagawang assessment can measure a broader range. It doesn't only look at a certain ability, and then the others are disregarded, hindi na papagtuunan ng pansin. Marami yung kung kaya natin, 'di ba? Gumawa ng isang assessment or magbigay ng assessment activity sa bata na maraming skills na made-develop, bakit hindi natin gawin, ano? Doon papasok creativity natin as teachers and also the experience. And then the third one, give students new roles in the process of assessment, making it a learning experience. Already mentioned it a while ago that when the current view doesn't does involve the teacher and the student. Normally, we have dialogue, we have interaction, we have giving of feedback. In that way, we give a new role in our sa ating estudyante, making them responsible for their own learning. Hindi nila nararamdaman na the learning experience is not solely coming from the teacher and just absorb it, but they are included in the learning experience, in the learning process. So that's what we want to see whenever we make, design, organize our own assessment tools. Again, dapat pag binigay natin yon, nalalaman natin kung kailangan ba nating mabago yung instruction. It gives us an idea if we need to modify instruction. Again, pangalawa, it measures a broader range. Okay? Skills and abilities. I want to add dun sa second bullet. Yun nga ang problema natin eh. We normally say na kaya diba, daming nating teacher natatambak yung trabaho. Totoo po yan, kahit ako po noon naman, no? Kahit even the last year of my teaching, talaga minsan natatambakan ako ng mga assessment na hindi ko naman na-checkan. So, yung pagka gumawa tayo ng isang assessment and it measures a broader range of skills in just a single assessment tool, edi maganda kasi we don't have to devise a lot more that measures another skill, then this one's another skill, matrabaho yun. So if we can design a certain assessment tool that can measure or can assess broader range of skills and abilities, I think it will give us more comfort, no, than what we normally do. And then again, last ones, give students new roles. We want to involve the students in the assessment process. Hindi pwedeng teacher lang yan, administer mo lang, no? Next, please. Okay, and then price person and light suggested, no, aside from, we are not discounting the use of, or we are not abandoning the use of paper and pencil tests, traditional yung test, mga objective test, hindi natin siya tinatanggal. Mananatili siyang nandyan. Pwede pa rin natin gamitin yon as long as we consider what we have said a while ago. But Price, Pearson, and Light also suggested the use of other assessment tools. That includes rubrics, o kaya performance-based assessment. Ito, madalas naman na ginagamit natin ito because remember, sa grading system ng DepEd, merong certain percentage for performance tasks. So yun eh, no? Performance-based assessment. Then also have portfolio assessment. And then ito, self-assessment. This is, I think, pwede natin gawin yan ngayon sa online kasi yung limitations na binibigay sa atin nung online marami dito hindi natin basta-basta magagawa, like performance-based. Remains to be seen what can we do para magawa yun. Then especially yung mga student performance, di ba? Yung mga MAPI teachers, we are still looking to find ways on how to do performance-based assessments in the new normal. I think we can also utilize yung self-assessment and peer assessment. I think I encountered a lot of studies na nagsasabi na these two types of assessments are very, very helpful to students. Okay? I hope you're still with me, no? Uh, all of those things, I know maraming, even I before I said, sinasabi ko rin itong mga studies na to, they are studies. They remain studies. They remain theories. But to practice it is really a challenge. It's really a challenge. And that's true. There are studies that says na principles not only of assessment but of education they remain principles, and it's very hard for to realize them in the actual classroom setup. Given the maraming factors na nakakaapekto now, for example, we are in the new normal. Ang daming challenges. So, ang purpose natin dito is not to, kaya nga, hindi tayo nag-suggest dito ng kung ano ang dapat na gawin sa new normal na mga assessment. Sasabihin natin, dapat paper and pencil test lang, kahit online. Pero kinuha online or portfolio assessment lang, o self-assessment lang. Hindi ngayon pa lang tayo nakaranas ng ganito. And we are still looking at the best practices of assessment in the new normal. So what we want to impart here is these are the principles that we have to consider. No? We are currently adopting the constructivist view. So if we will try to design assessment tools for our students, let us consider the principles of formative assessment. Yun yung accepted ngayon. I know it's hard because even I will not, in my own practice, it's hard to do it 100%. There are a lot of challenges talaga. But I think those challenges should not be a reason for us to be na mahadlangan tayo to try our best improve our own practice, no? Gumawa tayo ng paraan na kahit pa konti-konti na-adapt natin yung bagong perspective na to. Kasi even in my experience, it's really hard to change the paradigm. Kasi nakasanayan na yan. No? Lalo na yung mga teachers natin na mas nauna pa sa ating. No? Ako nga, nahihirapan dahil kahit bago lang naman tayong nagtuturo, we're not really that old in the service. Nung tayo naman estudyante, ganun din tayo ina-assess. So sa tingin mo, growing up, that's the right perspective for assessment. But there's a paradigm shift Nagbago tayo ng style ng pagtuturo. Kailan pati assessment. Unti-untiin natin hanggang sa fully maka-adapt tayo dun sa bagong perspective. Okay? Now, dun sa mga napakinggan nating studies that shows na ito na yung bagong perspective ng assessment, constructivist view na. Anong sinasabi ng DepEd sa kanilang mga policies? Are the policies in are DepEd policies in assessment? Are they inclined to the constructivist approach ng assessment o traditional pa rin sila? Susuriin natin kung ano yung mga issuances ng DepEd. Anong sinasabi nila, and we will check kung traditional ba yung pananaw nila or are they constructivist already. Next slide, please. So, ang una natin susuriin is, of course, DepEd Order Number 8, Series of 2015, which is the Policy Guidelines on Classroom Assessment for K-12, for the K-12 curriculum. So, we'll check, ano ba ang sinasabi ng DepEd Order na ito? Which is yung sinusunod natin. Ito yung DepEd Order na nag-institute ng grading system natin sa DepEd. Kung nasa DepEd pa ako, for example, sa science, 40% written work, 14 performance tasks, 20 ang quarterly assessment. Then other subjects, iba-iba na yung allotment niyan, depende. Anong sabi nila tungkol sa assessment? Sabi, the order points out that assessment involves both the teacher and the student. So dito pa lang kita natin na this is already a constructivist view of assessment eh. You involve the teacher and the student, no? Hindi lang siya a process na teacher lang ang bahala. It should be an interaction between the teachers and the students. So kita natin constructivist pala yung pananaw ng DepEd regarding assessment eh. So ang definition ng assessment no sa order na yon, it is a process that allow the teacher to keep track of the learner's development in reference to the given learning competencies. Anong sabi? It allows the teacher to keep track. When you are keeping track, you are what? Kailan mo tinitingnan yun? Sa dulo ba siya? Hindi, you keep track. So ibig sabihin, along the way, during the learning process, you are monitoring if learners are really learning. So it's again the constructivist view of assessment. Hindi kasi sinabi na assessment is defined as a process that allow the teacher to determine the standard reached by students according to the learning competencies set by the Department of Education. Because if yun ang sinabi, the assessment of learning yun, traditional yun. But no, what we have is a definition that pointing towards formative assessment, assessment for learning, constructivist view, keeping track of the learner's development. You value the development. You value the learning process. Kita natin, di ba? Next po. Next slide, please. So anong sinasabi ng DepEd regarding formative assessment and summative assessment? Tingnan natin, ano? Formative assessment. Kailan siya binibigay? Okay? It is given to improve instruction and help students identify strengths and weaknesses through feedback. So, parang yung sinasabi natin nga kanina doon sa mga studies, ang purpose is to improve instruction. No? Hindi siya binibigay sa end of instruction, bibigay siya during the instruction for us to see what are the improvements na kailangan natin gawin. And also, it helps identify strengths and weaknesses through feedback. Okay? So, yun din sinabi natin kanina. Along the way, during the process, you give feedback to students. You help them identify, ito yung kahinaan na kailangan mo improve, ito yung mga strong points mo. So in that way, you are able to track the progress and make students active members of the learning process. Again, they should be active members. This is to give also the responsibility to learn, hindi lang sa'yo, pati sa kanila. Para pag nagkakasingilan, hindi lang sa'yo ang singil. You will also put the responsibility on the learners themselves. Okay? Ano pa? I have a question. Sir Irby, andiyan ka ba? Tawag dito? Ito bang formative assessment? Kailangan i-record yan? Di ba? Normally, we have a class record. And our practice, we record everything. We record everything. Quizzes, activities, exams, of course, projects, performance tasks. Should we record formative assessment results? Yes, we should. Of course. Why? Kasi nga we track progress eh. We track progress. How can we track progress if we don't have record? We don't have the records. Okay? So remember, formative assessments should be recorded. But another question is it graded? Is it included sa pagbibigay ng grade sa bata, yung formative assessment results? Halimbawa, yung traditional na lang, you give quizzes. Ngayong online, pwede mo naman gawin yan through online platforms. Let's say, You have Kahoot, you have Socrative is another good application for administering a test online, and many other softwares na pwede nating gamitin, mga online applications. You give short quizzes, for example lang. And of course, you record the scores. Ano? Tanong, are those results part, should they be part of the grades that you gave to your students? For example, you are using them. Di ba sabi natin, you're using them to identify strengths and weaknesses, give feedback, and then to improve instruction. So kung halimbawa, mababa yung results, pabagoy mo instruction, reteach. Ngayon, yung results ba na yun? I-record natin? I-record natin. Kasi gusto natin tingnan yung improvement eh. Paano natin malalaman yung improvement kung wala kang ni-record na results? At tanong natin ngayon, i-grade ba natin? So tingnan natin. Next slide please. We have summative assessment. Ano yung kaibahan niya sa formative assessment? Kanina kasi nakita natin binibigay ang formative sa gitna ng instruction eh. Embedded siya sa learning process. Kasi nga nagtatrack tayo ng development, yung learning process ng bata. Ngayon, ang summative assessment, according to DepEd, order number 8, series of 2015, is given at the end of a period of learning. For example, end ng unit, end ng chapter, end ng quarter, to describe the standard reached by the learner. So magkaiba sila ng purpose eh. Formative assessment, binibigay to improve instruction, to keep track of students' learning, to give feedback. Meanwhile, summative assessments are used to describe the standard reached. And what? For example, yun nga, you give quizzes. Let's say a certain unit yun. You record everything. You modify the instruction based from the results. You reteach. You give another formative test. Let's say a quiz again. Then nag-record ka, maganda na yung performance. So iniwan mo na siya. Then next topic. Natapos yung period ng learning. Let's say natapos yung quarter. Then you give your summative assessment. Normally, we give long tests. We give summative tests. The purpose of that is to determine ano yung standard na naabot ng bata eh. Doon sa proseso na ginawa natin, na tinutulungan natin yung mga estudyante, hindi lang tayo nagtuturo, nag-a-assess tayo, formative assessment, to help students attain yung standard. Malalaman mo yun sa summative assessment. At anong sabi? Results from it are used to report on the learner's achievement. So, balikan natin yung tanong ko kanina. Nire-record ang formative assessment. Pero hindi naman sa summative assessment, syempre, i-record mo yan. Ang tanong natin, kasama ba sa pag-grade ang formative? Dun sa D1 ng DepEd Order number 8? Hindi. Ang sabi, ang results from summative assessments are the one used to report on the learner's achievement. Bakit natin isasama yung formative? Mayroong mga points doon wherein mababa talaga yung scores. Ano? Then, mag-i-improve. So, pag pinagsama mo yun, di mag-middle lang yun. Parang, it's not unfair, but it's against the principle of summative assessment, which is to describe the standard. Diba? What you want to get in your summative assessment is to determine saan umabot yung bata matapos yung proseso na yun. So that's why we only get results from summative assessments as our basis for grading our students. That is one of the hardest things na kailangan nating tanggapin. Even I must admit na initially talaga, it's really hard to change that kind of way na hindi siya kasama sa grades. Kasi ang dahilan, even I, may reasons, para naman yun effort ng bata. And then the other students na hindi naman nakipag-cooperate, Diba? Mas may highlight mo sa grade yun. Kung kasi pati formative, di sila nagko-cooperate eh. Pero, we have to change the perspective eh. Sabi nga natin, paradigm shift eh. Pag paradigm shift, radical yan, karaniwan, radical change. So we have to change that mindset. You know, one of the reasons that I hear, and that I think is a valid reason, is yung students themselves eh. Ito, karanasan naman natin to, maraming mga bata nagtatanong tungkol sa grades. At sasabihin nila, hanapin nila ano yung basis ng grades mo. So maybe some of us will be having problems. Paano papaliwanag yun na hindi mo sinama sa grades yung quiz? Eh, ang pagkakaunawa ng bata, eh, kasama yung nagigradean yun, di ba? So sa tingin ko na, ang tingin ko lang dyan, di ba sabi natin, we have to involve the students in the process of assessment. So I think part of that is to explain to them that formative assessments are not graded. They are only used for tracking yung development ng bata, yung development nila. So, I think it should give them the idea, yung results na yun, if they are prepared for the summative assessment, which will be the basis. Kasi kung mabababa yung formative nila, eh, dapat wag siya mag-expect sa summative, di ba? So, dapat ganun yung perspective. I think ipaliwanag na lang natin muna. And then, also, we explain also to the parents. Kasi they are they are key stakeholders eh. So, dapat malaman din nila yung proseso ng assessment. Para maunawa nila. Kasi ang daming, hindi naman madami, but there are some parents that they really ask yung basis ng grades. There are some. So I think in the first place, dapat if we are able to explain to them and also to the students yung proseso ng assessment, eh, mauunawa nila kung bakit hindi ginagawang basis ng grade yung quizzes kung sakaling hanapin nila. In that way, siguro, yung kalooban natin, pag ginawa natin siya in practice, mas luluwag na. Kasi nauunawaan naman ng magulang na yung ginagawa mo ay yung siyang proseso dapat. Ano? So I think may ganun dapat. And then, ayun, kung may issue na yung formative assessment na pinigay mo, hindi naman aligned yung binigay na summative assessment. For example, galing siya sa ibang source, sa division, mga ganun. Eh, ibang issue na yun. Hindi na natin... I think the solution there, for example, we always encounter that. Nagbigay ang summative, let's say, yung quarterly assessment mo galing sa division office or any higher whatever. Tapos yung questions ay hindi aligned sa tinuro mo, sa competencies na tinake up nyo, eh, the best solution, I think, there's to give another summative assessment. Hindi naman prohibited sa DepEd order eh. Na, halimbawa, may quarterly assessment kayo. Hindi lang naman yun yung periodic test na binibigay eh. Actually, pwede ang performance test na periodic assessment. Depends on you. You are the teacher eh. You give another one which suits better depending on what happened. Maybe the competencies is more aligned. It is more aligned to the competencies yung ibibigay mo sa summative test compared to one given by a third party, let's say. So those are some issues that we have to resolve. Anyway, malinaw dun sa DepEd order number 8 na tawag dito, yung DepEd, ang policy niya ay naka-incline sa formative sa constructivist view. Hindi hina-highlight yung importansya ng formative assessment, yung process of reaching or helping students reach the standard. Okay? At hindi naman completely tinatanggal yung summative assessment. In fact, ito pa rin yung basis nung grades yung standard na na-reach. Okay? So that's what DepEd Order number 8 series of 2015 says. That's a very important document coming from DepEd. Aside from that, Ano pa ang sinasabi ng DepEd? Ito naman, let's check Domain 5 of the Philippine Professional Standards for Teachers. The PPST was instituted for DepEd to have a single way or single standard for teachers. Hindi iba-iba yung standards for at least for DepEd schools. So naka-articulate doon, you have seven domains. Each domain is about a certain aspect of education. Let's say teaching strategies, so on and so forth. Domain 5 is on assessment and reporting. So that's a recognition of how important uh, assessment is. It has its own domain. It's a very essential part of instruction. Ngayon, ano sinasabi ng domain 5? It has 5 strands, no? And let's check each of the strands and see if naka-incline ba siya sa traditional o sa constructivist. Consistent ba siya dun sa sinasabi ng DepEd Order number 8? Kasi mas nauna yun bago tong PPST. Let's check. First strand is on the design, collection, organization, utilization of assessment strategies. Yan, hindi natin. Both for the traditional view, constructivist view, ginagawa yan. Let's look at this text 2 strands. You have the monitoring and evaluation of learner progress and achievement. Is it constructivist? Yes. Kasi you put work or you consider the monitoring. Kailangan chine-check mo, mino-monitor mo yung learning progress and achievement. Which is yung sinasabi natin kanina pa regarding the constructivist view. And the third one is the feedback, no? Magka-connecta yan dalawa. You monitor, you evaluate the progress, and then you give feedback. And those two are, again, basic tenets of the constructivist view of assessment. Okay? What's next? Next slide, please. So you have communication of learner needs, progress, and achievement to key stakeholders. Well, in this case, can be done for both traditional and constructivist. And the last one, this one, is the use of assessment data to enhance teaching and learning practice and programs. Again, this is a fundamental principle na naman ng constructivist view. You don't only use assessment data to determine the standard reached, but also, yung nga kanina, monitor and give feedback and enhance teaching and learning practice. Ginagamit mo yung resulta to find out ano pa ba ang pwede kong i-improve sa ginagawa kong proseso ng pagtuturo. Okay? So based from what we saw on two fundamental documents from DepEd regarding assessment, yung DepEd Order number 8, series of 2015, and Domain 5 of the PPST, DepEd is adopting the constructivist view of assessment. So dapat matibay tayo dun sa paniniwala na dapat sundin natin yung prosesong ito, bagong perspektibo na to. Kasi yun yung sinusuportahan ng dalawang fundamental na dokumento ng DepEd regarding assessment. Okay? So again, I know it's hard to change perspectives, especially at the middle of the pandemic. But I think we at least have to try. We teachers are part of our continuous learning, continuous improvement is for us to practice, no? Try to see if we can apply those things na sinasabi ng mga pag-aaral, sinasabi ng DepEd. Try our best, no? It's not easy for sure, but there's no harm in trying, especially for the professions, for the students. Why not, no? Paunti-unti gawin natin. Sa isang klase muna, then, pagka sa tingin mo, kinakaya mo na, kaya mo nang gawin, nag-grasp mo yung proseso, try it in other classes. Then, unti-unti, will achieve. This is for the better. Everyone, students, we teachers also, and other stakeholders in our country as a whole. Okay, thank you very much. May mga tanong ba tayo, Sir Hervin? Salamat sa pagkakataon. Sana may nai-share tayong konti sa mga teachers natin. Ito naman, ah, konting konting nalalaman lang natin na pwede nating i-share. Basta tawag dito, new normal kasi. Kaya kailangan nating i-equip sa sarili natin maraming kaalaman. Thank you, Sir Irvin, for the opportunity.
Maraming salamat kay Sir Jetro Gardon. Kung may questions tayo, teachers, pwede tayong mag-comment sa baba. Pero may lawa tayong comment from Ma'am Shi Tekla.
Yes.
Very interesting topic. Wow, thank you. Thank you po. Kay Ma'am Mary Ann Cruz, good evening, sir. Thanks for information. Interesting topic from Gabriela Silang Elementary School. Wow, umabot tayo hanggang Gabriela Silang Elementary School. Bakilala mo yan, Sir Jetro.
Yan ba yung, well, kung dyan ako graduate na elementary. Hi, ma'am. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have learned something.
Sir Jetro, ngayon kasi maraming nakaharap na challenges ang ating mga kaguruan, ang ating mga parents, ang ating mga learners, kasi lalo ngayong new normal. So, bukod, di ba, assessment ang ating pinag-usapan ngayong gabi. Para sa iyo, sir, ano po ba yung pinaka-importanting tip na mabibigay nyo sa ating mga teachers na lahat tayo nag-a-adapt sa new normal Kasi hindi naman natin inaasahan itong pandemyang ito. Ano po ba ang inyong masasabi sa kanila? Any words of wisdom para sa ating mga kaguruan, mga parents, and also to the learners?
Well, una sa learners natin, I think the most important thing is yung mga bata will learn to love learning no? Aside from loving God, first of all, their families, their love, mga kapwa nila tao, kahit mga kaaway nila, they should also develop the love for learning. Kasi it's when you have that kind of love for learning, yung motivation mo naturally develops And no matter what challenges that are present sa atin, may pandemya man o wala, ma-overcome mo yun if you really love to learn. No matter what the modalities will be modular, online, o face-to-face. Pag mahal mo yung pagkatuto, talagang matututo ka. Then for our parents, I hope you will always be with your children at the middle of this pandemic, especially sa kanilang pag-aaral. Support them. This is an opportunity for you to personally monitor your children, kasi nandiyan lang sila sa bahay. Tawag dito, bigyan nyo sila ng pagkakataong makapaglaro, makapaggawa ng mga gawain ng bata. Pero make sure that there's always time for them na yung pag-aaral, ibigyan nila ng sapat na panahon. Suportahan nyo sila, show them na sinusuportahan nyo sila dahil napakahalaga ng edukasyon. It's a game changer. Mahirap ka, hindi ka wala kayong makakain. Kung nakapag-aral ka, darating ang panahon naman, sa awa ng Diyos, makakaraos kung nakapag-aral lalo sa panahon ngayon. So, suportahan natin yung mga anak natin. Sa lahat ng tao na nasa paligid nila, pinakauna nilang hahanapan ng suporta sa lahat ng gagawin nila, lalo sa pag-aaral, parents nila, kayong mga magulang. Kami mga teachers, secondary lang kami sa ganyan mauuna yung suporta ninyo, and then we'll help you sa pagpapakita ng kahalagaan ng edukasyon sa inyong mga anak. Sa mga teachers naman, it has been challenging for us, ever since naman, kahit walang pandemic, maraming challenges sa profesyon. Ang sa tingin ko lang na dapat nating tanggapin o yung perspective natin is, one is to give our best and try things na sa tingin natin makakatulong sa instruction. Magbasa-basa tayo minsan ng mga bagong strategiya, online man yan, o pagdating ng araw, kung babalik pa tayo sa face-to-face, Kung ano yung mga bagong pamamaraan. And then subukan natin kahit paunti-unti. Nang meron tayong nagiging improvement at mas nagiging magkakaroon ng maraming yung variety ng kakayahan natin magturo. Alam niyo po mga kapwa guro, hindi sukatan yung tagumpay ng guro in terms of hanggang saan yung inaral mo, nakapag PhD ka ba, yung thesis mo ba na-publish or whatsoever. It's still in our own practice eh. Yung kung ano ginagawa sa classroom, may aral ka nga. Pero yung practice mo sa classroom, alam nyo na, hindi maganda. Or nor the distinction na sabihin natin mataas yung rango mo pero the way you teach hindi natin nakikita yun. We have to try new things, be open to developments, and siyempre mahalin natin yung profession natin. Pag mahal mo yung ginagawa mo, lahat ng kabutihan na maaari mong gawin as a teacher magagawa mo. And of course, pray to God that bigyan niya tayo sa araw-araw ng kalakasan, ng karunungan na masagawa natin yung trabaho natin para sa mga bata, para sa pamilya natin, para sa bayan na rin natin, at para sa kaluluwalhati pa ng ating Panginoong Diyos. Yan, thank you. Thank you, Sir Ervin, for...
Kasi teachers, parents, and learners, itong channel na to ginawa lang talaga natin para kahit papaano makatulong tayo sa mga kaguruan, sa mga magulang, at sa mga estudyante. Kasi kung makikita nyo yung mga videos na aking ginagawa, talagang ano lang siya, simpleng tulong lang para sa ating lahat. Para makatulong kung paano yung tamang pagbabasa sa mga bata, para maibsan yung... Kasi yung mga bata, kung may isip natin, since February nung nag-lockdown, wala na silang aral eh. Pero believe naman tayo sa mga magulang na talagang gumagawa ng paraan. Pero dapat lahat tayo, kumbaga, ngayong new mode of learning na tinatawag, yung tatlong pinaka-importanting role eh. Yung teacher, yung parents, tsaka yung learners o yung mga bata. Kailangan magtulungan lahat. Kaya gumagawa kami ng paraan. Katulad ni, buti nga si Sir Jetro, pumayag siyang mag-talk sa ating channel. Kasi kumbaga, makapulot man kayo ng kaalaman na inyong magagamit para sa inyong pagtuturo o pagtulong sa ating mga mag-aaral para sila ay matuto ngayong new normal. Okay, shout out daw kay Jason De Vera. Kapatid yata ni Sir Jetro to eh.
Ay, hindi ko kilala yan.
Okay. Sir Jetro, any final words bago tayo paalam sa ating mga viewers na any advice, any
ayun lang. Babati muna ako, no? Hello sa Gabriela Sila Elementary School. Namimiss ko na yung mga teachers ko dyan. Proud alumni year 2006. Tagal na. Tala High School also. PNU, hi. No, and then PU pala. Yung mga kasama ko dyan, no? At sa iba mga estudyante ko, mga kaibigan natin dyan na nakikinig po. Hello, nasa YouTube na ako mga brad. And well, for parting words, tsaka sa family ko pala, hello. Yan kay Jason, hindi ko kilala yan eh. Parting words, for our teachers, kaya natin to, whatever happens. Pandemya man yan, wala yan, pandemya lang yan. We have to learn, we have to adjust, of course, that's for sure. But at the end of the day, we are teachers. We are not teachers dahil wala lang. Naging teacher na lang tayo bigla. Naging guru tayo dahil may kakayahan tayo. Kaya natin mag-adjust, kaya natin umisip ng mga pamamaraan, makakasagot sa mga problema natin sa pagtuturo. Tiwala lang sa sarili ang kailangan siguro at siyempre humingi tayo ng gabay sa Panginoon para sa mga kakaharapin na pagsubok. I understand yung mga deputy teachers, October ang pasukan pero they are already starting to prepare. Busy na yung marami sa mga deputy teachers, private school teachers, some of them already started. So, hoping gabayan tayo ng Panginoon sa mairaraos tong school year na to. Maraming salamat, Sir Irvin, for having me. I want to congratulate you for having this channel. Napaka-noble nung intentions. Hindi siya for anything. It's for the, for helping our teachers, parents, students sa kanya-kanya nilang endeavor. More power and God bless. Thank you very much.
Yan. Ito may pahabol na comment, Sir Jetro, kay Sir George Binalingbing. Ling mo, Sir Jetro, we are proud of you. Lahat ng mga guro dito sa Gabriela. Yun, thank you po, sir, for watching.
Hi, Sir George. Teacher ko yan. Teacher ko yan, elementary. Hello, sir. Tsaka yung mga teacher ko dyan. May miss ko na kayo at I hope to see, hoping na makita ko kayo muli in the coming months. Yan, thank you.
Ayun po, itong ating teacher series, gagawin po natin to every weekend. Iba't ibang guest po ang ating iimbitahan para po magbigay kaalaman. Pwedeng teacher, pwedeng magulang, or pwedeng estudyante ang maging guest natin dito. Kasi sa edukasyon, hindi lamang guro dapat ang gumagana. Lagi natin tatandaan. Kailangan gumagana din ang magulang at gumagana din ang mag-aaral. Kasi kailangan natin magtulungan, lalo ngayong new normal. Yun lamang po, kung wala na po tayong tanong, maraming salamat po sa lahat ng nanood at manonood ng video na ito. Sir Jetro, maraming salamat po. Sa uulitin, sir, ha?
Sure. Anytime.
Sige po. Maraming salamat po. I-end ko na po ang video na ito. Thank you po.